Most people think of sleep as disconnecting. That night is just a pause, a break, a brief moment between 2 days. They assume their body shuts down, their mind goes quiet, and their awareness fades away, like pressing the off button on a biological device that needs recharging. This common belief, which has become a cultural norm, is one of the biggest misunderstandings that keeps us spiritually disconnected. In reality, sleep isn't just rest. It's a design. It's not a stop. It's a process. And it's not emptiness, but a whole territory. Sleeping is actually one of the most complex and intentional spiritual acts the soul performs, a multidimensional mechanism that, when not blocked or disturbed, allows consciousness to break free from heavy matter, travel through unseen realms, and reconnect with what waking life makes us forget. Sleep is a form of remembering, not memories of childhood, unfinished work, or lessons from books. What we recall during sleep, if our body is honored and our mind silenced, is the very origin of who we are. Not our social identity, but the part that existed before birth, the part that silently watches over everything we call life. This book aims to show that sleep, taken for granted by millions every night, is actually a gateway, an overlooked threshold, a ritual lost by a civilization that no longer knows how to die without fear or wake up with purpose. We sleep poorly, not because we're simply tired, but because we are fragmented. We wake exhausted, not because we didn't sleep enough, but because our soul didn't come back whole. We suffer from insomnia, nighttime anxiety, and nightmares without realizing these are not illnesses but messages. The body is crying out to be emptied. The soul wants to take flight, but the body refuses to let go, not out of weakness but out of forgetfulness. This isn't a manual for better sleep. It's a guide to remembering what really happens when you sleep well, what the body does when the soul is free, what the soul learns when it's no longer watched by the mind, what the whole universe reveals when you finally surrender control and embrace mystery with respect. Here we'll talk about forced dreams and interrupted journeys, about entities invading the mythical space and the forgotten technology written into the body. We'll discuss the pineal gland as an antenna, melatonin as a vibrational key, insomnia as the soul's reflection of unhealed wounds. But above all, we'll explore the radical act of sleeping as a spiritual path. Because whoever manages to sleep in alignment won't wake up in the same world. The one who truly returns brings back something from another plane, and with that something, they can rebuild their entire life. Welcome to true sleep, the kind measured not by hours but by truth. Chapter 1. The Hidden Design of Sleep. Every night we all pass through a door few know exists. A door that doesn't lead to a place but to a state, where the self dissolves without dying, where the body's heartbeat pauses, and where the soul, if lightened, takes a journey no plane can chart. Sleep isn't just a physiological shutdown, as science tends to see it. It's a carefully crafted design that allows the soul to return, if only for a few hours, to its origin. It's not rest, but return. Not neurological shutdown, but spiritual technology. Not escape, but preparation for what can't be understood while awake. In the Zohar, a key text in Jewish mysticism, it says, "When a man sleeps, his soul rises and testifies in the heavens." To many modern readers, this sounds metaphorical, but it's actually a literal truth that becomes clear once we move beyond the scientific arrogance of only trusting what's visible. What the Zohar describes isn't symbolic, but a real, recurring, deeply structured event. When the body sleeps, what activates isn't inactivity, but a reconnection circuit. The soul detaches via the silver cord, ascends to subtler planes to gather messages, release worries, and access dimensions impossible to reach while awake. But this process only works under very specific conditions that are often ignored or disrupted today. The Corpus Hermeticum echoes this, saying that during sleep, the soul is freed from the senses and approaches the divine intellect, nous. For Hermes Trismegistus, sleep wasn't passive, but an active transition where the soul leaves the prison of the senses to briefly commune with the creative intelligence. The body shuts down like a lamp, not to stop shining, but to let a subtler, less desire-tainted light come through. In this Hermetic view, sleep is an alchemical process, a symbolic decay where identity breaks down and consciousness ascends the ladder of being. This idea aligns with teachings from the Upanishads, especially the Mandukya Upanishad, which describes 3 states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and a 4th, transcendental state reached only by going beyond the first 3. Sleep isn't just on-off, awake, asleep, but a gradual passage toward the absolute. When a person truly sleeps, free from emotional baggage, without tech interference or psychic ties, they move from dreaming toward deep sleep and then toward that transcendental state. But the body must be prepared like a temple and the mind like an offering. Neuroscience, unintentionally, supports this ancient wisdom. Studies of REM sleep show the brain isn't inactive but lights up areas that don't work during waking. The visual cortex activates without open eyes. The hippocampus consolidates memories that never physically happened. The limbic system processes emotions in ways that defy daytime logic. These findings reveal a paradox. Sleep isn't a shutdown but a shift, as if the body boots up a second operating system, one that connects not to the outside world, but to the invisible. The thalamic liaison phenomenon, where different parts of the brain sync up electrically during certain phases of deep sleep, provides solid scientific backing for what the Zohar and Hermes described symbolically. This synchronization lets brain areas that usually don't communicate do so smoothly, helping create a kind of psychic integration that's nearly impossible while awake. Spiritually, you can think of this as the alignment of inner temples. When the soul leaves, it leaves the house in order. But if there's interference, like resentment, fear, or addiction, the sync breaks down, sleep is disturbed, and the soul gets stuck between worlds. The circadian rhythm, controlled by the pineal gland and sensitive to sunlight, isn't just a biochemical process. It's actually a spiritual clock marking the best times to embark on this journey. Ancient traditions understood that sleeping at nightfall synced you up with cosmic rhythms, not out of superstition, but because they knew sleep was a ritual, not just a function. Sleeping at weird hours, in front of screens, after heavy meals or emotional stress, shuts the portal. The body might be still, but the soul doesn't take off. Here's the biggest paradox. Most people sleep without truly resting and rest without actually going anywhere. The body crashes from fatigue, but never truly enters deep sleep, because real sleep depends not on physical tiredness, but on releasing energy. Those who've forgiven their dreams, who've let go, rise. Those who've surrendered their mental agenda are carried, but those holding onto guilt, desires, frustrations, or demands can't fully sleep. Their body rests, but their soul is trapped like a bird beating against bars, unaware the door is open. So, can we reclaim sleep's original design? Can we sleep again like the ancient sages, the yogis, the prophets? Science might say just balance neurotransmitters, optimize melatonin, reduce stress. But the spirit knows that's not enough. The soul doesn't need chemicals, it needs reconciliation. The soul doesn't need muscle stillness, it needs inner silence. Only when the body is honored as a temple and the mind offered up does sleep become what it was meant to be from the start, a gateway to eternity. In the coming chapters, we'll explore why that gate closed, how the silver cord gets blocked, what happens when the soul is trapped, and how to reshape our daily lives so we sleep not out of habit, but as a ritual, not because biology demands it, but because the spirit allows it. Then sleep will once again become walking toward God without leaving the body, dying without stopping living, remembering what the day made us forget. Are you ready to truly dream again? Chapter 2. The mind that won't yield. The body that won't fly. Every restless body is a visible sign of a mind that refuses to let go. Insomnia doesn't start in the neurons. It starts with unresolved thoughts that take over consciousness like they're forever. There's no deep sleep when your mind keeps circling. No real freedom at night if the mind still guards its own prison. And no soul rising if the inner voice, even if quiet at night, keeps running like hidden machinery beneath the surface. Sleep isn't just a physical process. It's the energetic result of an invisible surrender that only happens when the mind empties itself of need, interpretation, and expectation. The ancients knew an undisciplined mind blocks the sacred process of sleep. Burgundy once said a man can do nothing because he is many, and among those many parts there's no agreement. While one part wants to sleep, another recalls a tense conversation. While one seeks rest, another demands resolution, justice, control. Inside us, there's not silence, but unconscious committees fighting for control, even at night. That's why not everyone who closes their eyes truly sleeps. Many enter a restless fog where the mind multiplies under different masks. Symbolic dreams, disguised nightmares, reactive memories, silent ruminations. Biology confirms this mental fragmentation messes with sleep chemistry even without words. Epigenetics shows that unexpressed emotions, especially fear, anger, guilt, resentment, and anxiety, trigger neurochemical patterns that disrupt the circadian cycle. When the nervous system stays on high alert, melatonin drops, cortisol rises, and the body treats the environment as dangerous, even in its own bed. The result isn't just trouble falling asleep, but an inability to reach deep phases where consciousness leaves the body. The mind, like an alarm that never turns off, keeps the soul stuck for reasons the ego can't always see. IPS. Levi wrote that imagination is the eye of the soul. But if that eye is blinded by worry, doubt, or repetition, it can't see the way to the invisible world. A blocked imagination acts like a dirty lens, stopping light from passing through. Without free imagination, not fantasy, but a channel of connection, there's no nighttime journey. What's left is a body that tosses and turns but never crosses the threshold. The soul is trapped by undigested thoughts that chain it invisibly. Fixed ideas not cleared from the mind, standing guard at sleep's door. From practice and observation, the connection between mind, body, and sleep has been clearly understood. Ancient Bardic traditions saw insomnia not as a physical illness, but as a sign of an undisciplined mind. Yoga wasn't meant as just physical exercise. It was training in attention, designed to prepare the practitioner to enter deep states of consciousness without getting lost in the lower mind. Patanjali put it simply, yoga is the cessation of mental whirlwinds. Only from that deep mental quiet can conscious detachment during sleep begin. Without mastering that, the mind acts like dead weight, holding the body back from taking flight. If the body can't fly during sleep, it's not because of a lack of technique or ritual, but because the mind won't let go. The soul can't separate from a body still gripped by active thoughts, even silent ones. Sleep, in this way, is an initiation that demands a very specific purification, not first of the body, but of mental structures clinging to interpretations, unfinished business, identities, or frozen emotions. Every unresolved thought becomes a psychic stone, every locked emotion a seal blocking the soul's passage to higher realms. The body, though still, subtly reflects what the mind refuses to release. The mind that won't yield often believes that turning off means losing something, maybe control, maybe some unfinished fix, maybe a story that shields us from original pain. But in resisting, that mind becomes both jailer of the body and enemy of the soul. It doesn't take active thoughts to disrupt sleep. Just the presence of unresolved issues running in the unconscious is enough. That's why deep sleep only happens when the mental space is free of demands. This doesn't come from force or effort, but from a higher kind of surrender where the mind stops being the star and becomes a servant to something greater. Neuroscience backs this up. Studies on chronic insomnia show that sufferers have hyperactivity in the prefrontal cortex even before falling asleep. This overthinking makes it impossible to shut down mental noise, keeping the limbic system from relaxing. That hyperactivity also messes with the production of GABA, the neurotransmitter essential for deep sleep. Energetically, it's like the body is ready to let go, but the thinking self refuses to surrender, and so it resists sleep. From an integrative view, the body can't sleep if the mind won't yield, and the mind can't yield if the soul hasn't been heard. Here's the modern insomnia paradox. It's not the body that needs rest, but identity. It's not the nervous system blocking sleep, but invisible ties to past memories. We don't sleep well because we haven't forgiven, haven't let go, haven't told ourselves, "You can rest now. You don't have to protect yourself anymore." The body's ready, but the soul is still trapped by ancestral vigilance. There's no rest while consciousness guards trauma like a flag. So how do we untie this knot? How do we teach the mind to yield when it's been trained to resist, control, and watch? Relaxation techniques and drugs that quiet consciousness without lifting its burden aren't enough. The real path requires retraining our inner dialogue, watching carefully how we speak to the world, and above all, making a daily choice to surrender what doesn't need understanding but must be handed over. Sleep doesn't come from trying harder but as a result of surrender. And that surrender happens when the soul stops fighting its history and is finally ready to return to the center, carrying no baggage. Then sleep becomes a spiritual trial, not because it's hard, but because it asks us to die each night to the stories that hold us up. The mind that won't yield fears this symbolic death, believing it's all we are. But whoever learns to empty the mind before sleep receives the greatest gift. The body is freed, the soul flies, and the spirit remembers. True sleep doesn't happen without this harmony, and real rest comes only when we silently surrender what we no longer need to hold on to. Chapter 3. The Suspended Soul. When sleep breaks down, there are nights when you wake up without really waking. Or more accurately, nights when the soul returns too soon, interrupted, startled, incomplete. The rational mind calls these sleep disturbances, sleep paralysis, intermittent insomnia, broken nightmares, restless movements, or sudden jolts awake with a racing heart. But beyond what we see, what's really happened is a failure in the soul's journey, a disruption of the nightly trip every consciousness takes, or should take, when the body sleeps. True sleep means the soul partially detaches from the heavy body, navigating through the astral body to intermediate or higher planes where it's healed, taught, or freed from unnecessary burdens. When this doesn't finish, the soul stays suspended, and the body wakes without the rest or integration true sleep should provide. This suspension of the soul isn't just a metaphor. It's found in both mystical traditions and cutting-edge neuroscience. Sleep paralysis, for instance, is one of the clearest signs of this incomplete separation. In this state, the physical body stays frozen while consciousness has returned but hasn't fully rejoined the body. The person feels awake but can't move, speak, or call out. Many cultures describe this as oppression by evil spirits or night demons. But beyond folklore, what's really happening is a disconnect between the subtle bodies and the physical body, a result of unresolved energetic interference, a psychic shock, or the intrusion of entities disrupting the natural sleep cycle. From a neuroscience perspective, sleep paralysis happens when the REM state intrudes into waking consciousness. During REM sleep, the body is naturally paralyzed to stop us from physically acting out our dreams. But sometimes, consciousness wakes up before the body has turned off that paralysis. This mismatch creates a terrifying experience that feels like a living nightmare or hallucination. What science hasn't fully accounted for, though, is the role of the astral body in this process. Neuroscience focuses on brain activity but doesn't ask the key questions. Who is the one aware they can't move? Who's observing from inside when the body won't respond? Millions of reports describing feelings of presence, chest pressure, fleeting visions in the corner of the eye, and overwhelming, unexplained fear point to an unseen dimension. The soul as traveler and the body as a docking station. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes an in-between stage called the Bardo, where consciousness, after physical death, lingers between worlds because it's unprepared for the transition. Interestingly, this matches what happens in many fragmented dreams. The soul leaves the body, but can't move on to the right planes and gets stuck in spaces that are neither here nor there. This stuck state often comes from deep fears, hidden trauma, or unprocessed emotions acting like psychic anchors. The result is that the body stays asleep, the soul hasn't reached its destination, and the experience is a jumble of collapsing realities, confusing visions, memory gaps, feelings of falling or being trapped, or watching without being able to act. This is the language of a soul suspended, one that hasn't finished its journey. The silver cord, mentioned in Ecclesiastes 12:6, before the silver cord is snapped or the golden bowl is broken, is a powerful symbol of the energetic connection between the physical body and the soul during sleep, astral travel, or even death. In cases of broken sleep, this cord doesn't snap but gets strained, tangled, or twisted. The sudden tug many feel when waking up abruptly, especially after deep sleep or that sensation of falling just before sleep, is a sign the soul was being pulled back urgently, often by a perceived threat or energetic disturbance nearby. This forced return can mess with dream recall, cause morning anxiety, and leave subtle physical effects like a racing heart, stiff muscles, or unexplained tiredness. In other words, the body wakes up, but the soul hasn't properly come back. Dream fragmentation, the struggle to remember whole dreams or make sense of chaotic jumbled scenes, isn't just forgetfulness. It reflects the dreamer's inner fragmentation. The soul doesn't dream in chaos. It's the body and mind, out of sync, that can't decode the astral journey. Like a corrupted file that won't open even though it's there, the soul's memories can't be understood if the mind is overwhelmed with cognitive or emotional noise. Dream fragmentation shows the soul traveled, but its experience wasn't integrated, as if an important message was written in a language the surface self can't read. Many traditions saw this as a loss of spiritual vision, not because there's no vision, but because the inner eye is closed. Micro-awakenings, brief moments of wakefulness that break deep sleep, are also studied by sleep science. Usually unnoticed by our conscious mind, they can happen dozens of times a night. Research links them to brain activity spikes, irregular heartbeats, or body temperature changes. From an esoteric point of view, these moments reflect instability between planes, failed attempts of the soul to leave or return, energetic disruptions, or defensive reactions to external presences. In shamanic practice, these were seen as signs that something or someone had entered the night's energetic field. Many people who suffer repeated nightmares, night terrors, or persistent sleep visions are going through energetic invasions or blockages that interrupt their true astral journey. Modern medicine offers drugs, anxiolytics, sleep aids, regulators, but these only dull the body without freeing the soul. It's like plugging a leak without fixing the pressure inside. True healing of broken sleep means reconfiguring the energetic field, learning to close portals before bed, releasing the body from the day's burdens, resolving lingering emotions, and most importantly, cultivating awareness of sleep as a sacred process. Without this awareness, the soul stays suspended between planes, and the body wakes every morning feeling like it hasn't fully returned. Freeing the soul from this suspension takes more than sleep. It takes preparation. The pre-sleep ritual should be as serious as prayer or meditation. The bed isn't just furniture, it's the altar where the soul rests before taking flight. If the space is cluttered with technology, emotional noise, or physical mess, the portal won't open, or it will open to the wrong places. Only when the body is treated like a temple and the mind like a willing instrument can the soul unfold its hidden map without interference. When sleep's true design is understood, it's not rest, but navigation. And if the soul stays stuck, returns halfway, or is yanked back before finishing its journey, the answer isn't giving up or labeling it a disorder. It's learning to read the signs. Every paralysis, every jolt, every fragment of strange dream is a coded message from higher dimensions waiting to be understood. It's not about getting rid of symptoms, but listening to them. Because whenever the soul can't fly, it's pointing to the knot that still needs untying. Chapter 4. The Interrupted Astral Journey. True sleep isn't an end, but a transition. A launch pad for consciousness that each night should use to leave behind the physical body's heaviness and perform tasks on planes where time doesn't bind us and space has no limits. When sleep fulfills its deeper purpose, it's about departing without escaping, dying without disappearing, and remembering without being awake. The soul, freed from its material support, doesn't enter a void but engages in subtle activities, visiting other souls, resolving unfinished conflicts, meeting guides from other realms, integrating forgotten lessons, and even joining collective efforts that go beyond personal identity. The astral journey is essentially the soul's natural movement when the body has been quieted through purification and the mind trained not to interfere. But for most modern people, this journey has been interrupted, not because it's impossible, but because its pathway has become blocked. We sleep without really leaving, dream without truly moving. The soul stays like a bird trapped in a clear cage, able to see the sky but unable to fly. When this journey is cut short, we lose not just rest, but learning, healing, and profound connection with dimensions designed to help us remember who we really are beyond our life story. The cause of this interruption isn't random or purely medical. It's a buildup of layers, unresolved trauma forming dense emotional knots, subconscious memories acting like anchors, external disturbances sabotaging the energetic field through waves, frequencies, or overstimulation, and mental habits that create constant saturation with no escape. The soul needs a certain vibrational clarity to awaken, but if it's tangled in unfinished thoughts, stuck emotions, and chaotic surroundings, it gradually disconnects from the astral path. It's not about wanting to leave the body, but knowing how to let go. And that can't happen if active attachments hold it back. Lucid dreams offer a glimpse of this potential. When someone realizes they're dreaming without waking up, they've crossed a threshold where ordinary consciousness and higher awareness can communicate. In this state, they can observe without judgment, choose without interference, and even act without physical consequences. But lucid dreaming isn't the goal. It's a waiting room for deeper journeys. If treated like a game, its potential is wasted. If embraced as spiritual training, the lucid dreamer learns to enter and exit subtle bodies consciously, without physical death or trance. Near-death experiences, NDEs, confirm the soul's ability to separate from the body and operate in other dimensions. People clinically dead report floating outside their bodies, watching doctors from above, traveling through tunnels of light, meeting familiar beings, receiving profound messages, and returning with a fresh understanding of life's meaning. These experiences show that consciousness doesn't depend on the body to exist. What happens in NDEs is, in many ways, what the soul does every night on a subtler level. Depart, observe, learn, integrate, and return. The difference is that in regular sleep, this happens without the heart stopping or vital systems shutting down. Shamanic traditions have recorded this for thousands of years. Shamans don't just sleep, they travel. Through chants, fasting, master plants, or breathing techniques, they enter what they call the spirit world. Not metaphorically, but as a real dimension accessible through training and energetic cleansing. There, they diagnose illnesses, communicate with ancestors, alter realities, and bring back guidance. Indigenous peoples didn't separate dreaming from healing. Sleep was both a therapeutic tool and a mystical practice. What made these journeys possible was clearing the energetic channels, quieting thoughts, maintaining a peaceful environment, syncing with natural rhythms, and holding clear intention. When the body became transparent, the soul could fly freely. Modern science, while still hesitant to recognize the soul as separate, has started studying altered states of consciousness. The Monroe Institute, for example, has spent decades researching astral travel, the vibrational states before detachment and related brainwave patterns. They found phases of hypercoherence between brain hemispheres, gamma wave activation, expansion of the body's electromagnetic field, and low-frequency sounds just before departure. This suggests we're not just dealing with imagination, but with an experience that can be replicated under the right conditions. Quantum physics also supports a non-local view of consciousness, letting us understand that the soul isn't limited by space-time and can exist in dimensions alongside the physical world without breaking any laws. Despite these clues, most souls stay earthbound at night, for reasons both inside and outside ourselves. Inside, unresolved trauma creates energetic density that blocks detachment. The soul, hitting emotional knots, chooses to stay or get stuck in in-between realms. Outside, sensory overload, electromagnetic pollution, heavy meals, and too much screen time disrupt the subtle energy field, creating interference that blocks or diverts the soul's ascent. Add in poor habits, going to bed with repetitive thoughts, exposure to negative influences, unprocessed feelings, and sleep becomes less a flight and more a tomb for consciousness. Sleeping should be an act of conscious freedom. The body lets go and the soul wakes up. True sleep isn't about being tired. It's about feeling light. Only those who have released the day's stories, forgiven enough to not need answers before bed, and offered their mind to silence instead of noise, can truly begin the journey. This isn't something you get just by wanting it or by following techniques alone. It requires energetic preparation and surrender. Technique without purity is empty. Purity without direction is pointless. The soul needs both, a clear channel and a steady compass. Every night the soul is invited to rise, but if the space isn't set apart, if the mind stays restless, if the body isn't tuned with wisdom, the invitation is missed. The body sleeps, but the soul doesn't travel. And without that journey, rest isn't real. Lessons aren't absorbed, healing doesn't happen, and what needs to leave stays stuck. When the soul is kept from flying, it starts to weaken. Its hidden map fades, its memory dulls, and the person wakes up feeling more drained, anxious, and disconnected. Not because they didn't sleep, but because they never really left the body behind. Sleeping will become one of the last spiritual arts this culture needs to relearn. Not as an escape, but as a sacred practice. Not a luxury, but a cosmic right. When fully understood, sleep becomes the soul's night school, the lab of inner transformation, the gateway to true awakening. Sleep isn't the opposite of being awake. It's the training the soul needs to remember how to come home. Chapter 5. The Soul's Nocturnal School. What we should remember from times before the soul was fully tied to the story-driven mind. Sleep wasn't a break from reality, but a connection to a deeper one. To sleep was to attend spirit school, to receive subtle guidance, integrate unfinished lessons, and reset energetic patterns that went off track during the day. The astral plane wasn't seen as a place to escape, but as a teaching platform where the soul, temporarily freed from sensory limits, was re-educated by non-physical intelligences, whose job wasn't to indoctrinate, but to remind. Sleep had a purpose. Every night was a chance to sharpen perception, undo illusions, and hear again the voice drowned out by the noise of waking life. Many traditions agree that consciousness travels to a specific place during sleep, a dimension that's neither random nor chaotic but organized. The Vedas spoke of Svarga, an intermediate plane where one's actions are reviewed and new teachings imprinted. Sufi mystics described the intermediate of the veils, where souls meet guides, departed loved ones, and living symbols. Taoists saw sleep as a projection of the Tao, a place to refine the Shen, or spiritual consciousness. Even early Christianity, before it became formalized, saw sleep as a channel where God spoke, like when Joseph, Mary's husband, received divine guidance not while awake but in clear, purposeful dreams. These weren't vague symbolic dreams or random guesses like modern dream dictionaries. They were clear instructions, exact teachings, corrective visions. In its natural state, the soul knows how to read these messages. But when the mind gets clouded by layers of forgetfulness, noise, fragments, and false connections, dream memory starts to fade. The body returns from sleep, but the content dissolves into the fog of forgetfulness. It's not that no dreams happened. It's that the channel to recall them got blocked. The experience was real but went untranslated. When we dream what we don't understand, the lesson stays hidden, like an unread letter sitting in the subconscious inbox. Neurobiology partly explains this loss of dream recall by hippocampal deactivation during some REM phases. That is, the part of the brain responsible for storing memories gets out of sync with conscious experience. But that doesn't explain why it happens sometimes and not others, or what helps vivid recall. Recent studies show people with regular spiritual practices, especially meditation and dream recall work, have more prefrontal activity during sleep, which helps retrieve important parts of the astral experience upon waking. Recall isn't just a brain function, it's opening channels between consciousness levels that need deliberate training. From an esoteric view, forgetting dreams happens because there's a mismatch in vibration between the plane where we dream and the one where we wake up. If consciousness isn't aligned with the experience it had, it can't properly download the info. It's like trying to read a binary file in a plain text editor. The data's there, but the reader can't make sense of it. Most people today wake up in a consciousness so dense, reactive, and overloaded with automatic patterns that they can't access what the soul experienced just hours before, at a higher level. That's why the little they remember often feels illogical, broken, or weird. Not because it was that way at the source, but because the inner translator lost the code needed to bring dream memory back. The first step isn't about technique, but recognizing sleep as a real, valid experience. If the subconscious thinks that dream content will be ignored, dismissed, or laughed at upon waking, it'll block access to protect itself. Consciousness needs to clearly show it's ready to remember, integrate, and receive. This isn't a mental game. It's more like a vibrational agreement. And like any spiritual commitment, it has to be maintained. Keeping a dream journal, writing right after waking up without judging or analyzing, works like a strong magnet for recalling dreams. It doesn't matter if what you write doesn't immediately make sense. The goal is to open the channel, not jump to conclusions. Even when a dream is remembered clearly, its content often defies normal logic. Impossible situations, symbols you don't usually recognize, nameless presences, or actions that break the laws of physics. That doesn't mean the dream isn't important. It means it's tapping into a level of understanding the surface mind can't grasp yet. Just like a 5-year-old can't understand calculus even if they hear about it, the soul can get messages in dreams that only make sense months or years later, once the mind is ready to decode them. In that way, every meaningful dream is prophetic, not because it predicts the outside future, but because it reveals what we still need to understand inside. Dreaming things you don't get isn't failure. It's a sign the soul has entered a higher classroom. In these classrooms, teaching doesn't happen with words, but through symbols, feelings, and universal patterns. The astral realm, as a learning space, teaches not through intellect, but through vibration. Often just seeing a symbol, a being of light, or a symbolic act in a dream leaves a mark on the soul that changes waking life, without any words needed. That's why some people change direction, heal old wounds, or make big decisions after a single powerful dream, even if they can't explain why. The soul understood, even if the ego didn't. If you think of the astral plane as a school, it clearly depends on the student's attitude. Here's a tough truth. Many people don't dream because they never asked to be taught. Intellectual pride shuts down the nighttime classroom. Distraction, disinterest, and arrogance block access. But a soul that wants to learn will be welcomed. It just has to open the space, use the body as a vessel, and clear the mind like a blank slate. Sleeping well is also a firm decision. If you treat each night as preparation, avoid judging your dreams when you wake, and express gratitude for whatever you receive. Even if you don't understand it yet, your dream memory starts to kick in. Dreams get clearer, more connected, and symbolically richer. Information filters through even while awake as intuitions, meaningful coincidences, or sudden insights into past events. What once seemed crazy begins to make sense, What felt distant becomes personal. The soul remembers it was taught, and something shifts naturally. Daytime awareness expands, not from learning more, but from remembering what it already knew. Sleeping isn't just about restoring the body, but about recovering what the day wiped out. It's about stopping to study life from the outside and instead receiving its codes from within. Those who learn to dream well start living from a new place, not because they've escaped reality, but because they've returned more whole. Chapter 6. What Spiritual Insomnia? The cry of the unforgiven soul. Insomnia is often explained by medical science as a sleep disorder, a neurotransmitter imbalance, a psychological issue, or the effect of modern stress. But while useful at their level, these don't get to the real root. You can't fix what you don't fully understand. And what's missed about insomnia is that beyond hormones and brain wiring, it's a message from the soul, a silent cry without words, felt as an inability to surrender to the night. People who can't sleep don't do so because their body isn't tired, but because their soul hasn't been freed from its hidden burdens. Insomnia is the ultimate sign of a soul that won't let go. Seen spiritually, sleep is emptying. It's not collapsing from exhaustion, but releasing what no longer needs to be carried. Yet consciousness still weighed down by guilt, resentment, fear, or unmet desires can't let go. The body lies down, but the soul stays awake, guarding wounds that never fully healed. The soul doesn't forget what the mind tries to bury. Even if forgiveness is faked and empty words of release are said, the soul knows if the burden's really been dropped. When it hasn't, it stays alert, not as punishment, but because it hasn't been given permission to rest. Insomnia is that denied permission. Neville Goddard, a profound teacher in modern metaphysics, said, "Forgiveness is not forgetting what happened, but stopping the emotion that ties us to it." From this view, forgiveness isn't a moral duty or intellectual task, but an energetic shift. Something changes in the soul's vibration when guilt fades, resentment breaks down, or an unkept promise is released. That vibration changes frequency. What was heavy becomes light. Resistance turns to flow, and sleep becomes possible. Not because sleep itself was fixed, but because the soul no longer has to stay awake. In the Gospel of Thomas, one of the most revealing Gnostic texts, Jesus says, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you." This sharp statement fits insomnia perfectly. What isn't released, expressed, or forgiven runs underneath, keeping the mind alert when it should rest. The soul, forced to carry unresolved pain, refuses to dissolve into sleep because it knows if it did, what's inside might explode uncontrollably. It's a defense system triggered, not by physical fear, but by emotional burdens that haven't been integrated. So you can't really sleep peacefully when there's some hidden guilt, unresolved conflict, or unacknowledged emotion hanging around. Science backs this up. Studies on heart rate coherence show a clear link between unresolved feelings and disrupted sleep patterns. The HeartMath Institute has shown that beyond pumping blood, the human heart emits an electromagnetic field that shifts depending on your dominant emotions. When you feel gratitude, forgiveness, compassion, or acceptance, your heart rhythm becomes coherent, meaning it follows a smooth, orderly pattern that helps your nervous system sync up with natural sleep-wake cycles. But when guilt, anger, fear, or resentment take over, that rhythm becomes chaotic and irregular. Your body goes into alert mode, which messes with melatonin production, boosts cortisol, and throws off the neuroendocrine system needed for deep, restful sleep. Heart coherence isn't just a trendy idea or some esoteric concept. It's a precise way to measure how your heart manages internal balance. Sleep isn't just something your brain does. It's a full-body experience. If your heart's out of emotional sync, your brain reads it as a sign that it's unsafe to let go. What you get is a hyper-alert mind, a tight body, and a soul that hasn't been truly heard. Here's where the spiritual side of insomnia comes in. It's not just a disorder, but the soul's way of protecting itself from unresolved issues. For the soul to rest, it needs to feel safe, that there's nothing to fear in the night. But if it's still carrying broken promises, open wounds, or denied pain, it can't surrender. Insomnia is an unconscious loyalty to what hasn't healed. It's the soul saying, "I'm not ready to go yet. I have to stay here guarding what's broken." That's why people who struggle with severe insomnia often get hit with intrusive thoughts, feelings of insecurity, or unwanted memories right when they try to sleep. These aren't random. They're the soul's way of holding on to what's unresolved. Until you break that pact with the past, your soul won't let you rest. Real forgiveness, the kind that truly frees you, doesn't happen in your head or as a moral choice. It happens when the soul lets go of the story, the emotion, or the identity it's been holding on to. It happens when you stop defending your pain like it's sacred. And often, that requires more than just willpower. It requires a deep realization that there's no point in holding on to that guilt, replaying that anger, or nursing that wound. Only then can the soul rest. When real forgiveness happens, the soul realigns at its core, the heart syncs with the universal flow, the nervous system quiets ancestral alarms, and without drugs or forced tricks, the body settles into coherence, the mind lets go, and the soul lets itself come home each night. If insomnia sticks around, don't just blame caffeine or screen time, though those matter. Start asking yourself, what haven't I let go of yet? What am I carrying without realizing it? Who am I still punishing inside? What haven't I forgiven myself for? Sleep isn't something you bargain for from outside. It's a gift you give yourself when you find inner peace. It's not about technique. It's about reconciliation. Only when the soul stops crying out for the unhealed can the body close its eyes without fearing what might be in the dark. And then sleep becomes coming home, not running away. Chapter 7. The Invasion of the Dream Space. Sleep should be a sacred sanctuary, a safe place where the soul, free from sensory noise, reconnects with its source, clears the day's weight, and aligns with its higher purpose. But often, this space gets invaded. Not all dreams come from within. There are intrusions, manipulations, dreams forced on the soul. What should be a healing temple becomes a psychic battleground, where outside forces sneak in, causing confusion, fear, desire, or patterns that don't belong to the dreamer. Modern culture tends to ignore or laugh off this reality, but it's been carefully recorded, warned about, and protected against in many ancient traditions, forbidden texts, clinical reports, and modern studies on neuroenvironmental effects. These parasitic entities don't just act during the day. Their prime playground is the vulnerable night. When your conscious guard is down, critical defenses switch off, and your energy field becomes more open. Any emotional crack, any lapse in intention, any unhealed imbalance can become a doorway. These entities don't always show up as scary or obvious figures. They often hide in disguise, familiar faces, pleasant scenes, or even spiritual beings. But their goal isn't to teach or guide. It's to feed off your energy, plant ideas, stir emotions, or distort your soul's frequency. The result is always the same. The dreamer wakes up drained, confused, scared, or even obsessed with images that don't come from their soul but from an invasive implant. Ancient grimoires clearly warned about these dangers. The Liber Juratus, attributed to Orio of Thebes, dedicates entire sections to protecting oneself during sleep, describing specific symbols, psalms, and rituals to keep out invading spirits while resting. The Picatrix, a key text in Islamic astral magic, instructs on guarding the dream space like you would defend the gates of a city under siege. Even the Testamentum Salomonis, an apocryphal work on protective magic, notes that certain entities can only enter if a person sleeps without having sanctified their bed. These warnings aren't superstition. They precisely describe a phenomenon modern science hasn't yet fully explored. Sleep as a vulnerable space open to external psychic influences. From the neuroscience side, though, pieces of the puzzle are starting to come together. Research on neuroenvironmental influence shows the brain can receive and process external stimuli even during deep sleep. Studies published in Nature Neuroscience reveal that certain sound waves, too subtle for waking awareness, can affect sleep patterns, activate specific brain regions, and even change the emotional tone of dreams. Exposure to sounds, frequencies, or electromagnetic pulses during the night has been proven to trigger anxiety, cause violent dreams, or disrupt sleep physiology without the sleeper realizing it. In other words, the sleeping mind isn't isolated. It's open, flexible, and can be influenced. This brain plasticity matches what esoteric traditions call open fields, psychic systems left exposed and unprotected by will. Sleeping without intention, protection, or cleansing turns the mind into a blank screen onto which anything can be projected. That's how strange, repetitive, heavy dreams that don't match the soul's personal symbolism come about. Often, these dreams are designed to implant specific emotions, guilt, anxiety, need, desire, that stick with you after waking. Emotional manipulation during sleep directly affects your daily behavior. This isn't conspiracy theory. It's a real technology operating from unseen planes or possibly experimental programs kept hidden from public knowledge. Clinical psychologist Mate Ullman, a pioneer studying sleep as a shared experience, documented cases where strangers had synchronized dreams containing detailed info about future events, and instances where one person appeared in another's dream with messages later confirmed as true. These findings, which point to overlapping dream fields, show that sleep isn't a private thing. When the soul detaches, it enters a network that can be used for growth, learning, connection, and healing, or for control, programming, energy draining, and confusion. The difference comes down to the dreamer's vibrational quality and spiritual awareness before sleep. Reports of forced or implanted dreams have come from many cultures. These dreams often feature intense emotional images or scenes that repeat over time with no obvious connection to the dreamer's life. They can feel foreign, as if coming from outside the soul. Some describe feeling invaded, as though a presence entered during the night, leaving them stuck with a fixed thought, uncontrollable emotion, or disturbing image. These experiences aren't pathological. They match ancient descriptions of nocturnal attacks by disembodied beings and clinical patterns of induced psychic disturbance. The soul has been targeted in its most vulnerable space. To stop these invasions, cleansing your physical space isn't enough. The soul needs to reclaim its territory and restore its sovereignty. Pre-sleep energy protection practices are essential today when sleep has been compromised. Conscious breathing, vibrational prayer, deliberately shutting off visual portals, screens, lights, invoking symbols of integrity, and consciously honoring night as sacred act as shields against unauthorized forces. Sleeping unprotected nowadays is like leaving the gates of a fortress wide open at night. The enemy might not always come in, but constant exposure weakens your defenses. Not every dream comes from your soul. That's an uncomfortable truth we have to face. Spiritual discernment means learning to tell what the soul creates through its own process from what has been implanted as foreign content. This isn't about fear or paranoia, but about vibrational sensitivity. A soul that knows itself recognizes its own tone, voice, and symbols. Anything that doesn't resonate with that inner steadiness needs to be questioned, not immediately rejected, but carefully examined. To sleep unconsciously is to hand over control at the day's most sacred moment. The dream space isn't neutral. It's a territory that can be cultivated or invaded. Those who protect it enter a night school of wisdom. Those who neglect it become screens for others. Ultimately, the quality of our sleep depends less on the body and more on spiritual sovereignty. A soul that sleeps under protection wakes with light. One that sleeps unguided may not return fully. Chapter 8. Sleeping as an act of energetic surrender. At its deepest level, sleep isn't just the body recovering or collapsing at day's end. Sleep is an initiation, a ritual surrender of who we think we are, a pause in the story we tell ourselves, a letting go of control. You can't truly enter deep sleep without a kind of symbolic death, a gesture of surrender. And that surrender isn't physical, it's energetic. If you haven't learned to release the image you hold during the day, you'll never fully fall into deep sleep, because you keep holding on to a self that insists on control, even while asleep. To truly sleep is to let go not of the body, but of the narratives that keep it locked into one fixed way of being. This idea is clearly expressed in Sufi tradition, where sleep is seen as a spiritual journey, a nightly preparation both for physical death and for the soul's daily return to God. Jalal al-Din Rumi put it simply, night is the moment when the soul can fly, if it's not tied down by the rope of thoughts. In this view, deep sleep isn't a privilege but a natural outcome. Only those who have quieted their minds and emptied their hearts of conflict can take that flight. Sufism doesn't teach specific sleep techniques, but ways of living during the day that let night become a door instead of a wall. So sleep isn't just something that happens at night. It's the invisible result of an inner attitude cultivated while awake. Christian mysticism, especially its contemplative branch, sees sleep similarly, as an act of surrender to mystery. St. John of the Cross talks about the silence that sings in the night, and St. Teresa of Avila describes moments of spiritual recollection where God holds the soul like a sleeper in his arms. She does nothing, yet remains awake to his presence. In both cases, this surrender isn't passive but an active participation in the mystery. When sleep becomes surrender, it turns into communion. No longer an unconscious process, but an intimate ceremony where the soul offers itself without resistance to the spirit's descent. Only then does the body become a temple and the bed an altar. Neuroscience supports this idea. The parasympathetic nervous system, the branch responsible for relaxation and restoration, activates not by chance, but when the brain senses no threat. And this depends not only on what's happening outside, but mostly on internal signals. When someone cultivates feelings of surrender, trust, gratitude, and acceptance, their brain releases neurochemicals like serotonin, oxytocin, and melatonin that trigger the rest response. This biochemical cascade not only promotes deep sleep, but repairs the body at the cellular level, boosts the immune system, and syncs circadian rhythms with natural cycles. So, energetic surrender is a real prerequisite for physical healing. This isn't just spiritual metaphor. It's measurable. Only when the body feels safe enough to surrender does it reach the deepest states of regeneration. Neuroplasticity, our brain's ability to change based on experience, is also heightened during sleep. Studies show that in deep sleep, emotional memories get processed, unnecessary brain connections are pruned, and important ones tied to clear perception are strengthened. But this doesn't happen automatically. It depends on the emotional and mental state you're in when you fall asleep. If you go to bed anxious, resentful, or stuck in looping thoughts, neuroplasticity actually reinforces those patterns, making them part of your brain structure. On the other hand, if you've trained your mind to surrender, trust, and let go, your brain rewires itself around peace, clarity, and openness. In other words, the soul reshapes the body during sleep, but only what's been released no longer needs to cling on. In daily life, this surrender doesn't just happen on its own. It has to be prepared. Getting ready for sleep should be taken as seriously as preparing for meditation or prayer. It's not about empty rituals, but about deep intentions that shape your energy field. Consciously breathing for a few minutes before bed, reviewing the day without judgment, mentally releasing those who hurt you, forgiving your own faults without punishment, and silently saying, "Today, I let go of what's not mine." These simple acts create real changes in heart rate, brain activity, and your body's electromagnetic field. The goal isn't to force sleep, but to open yourself up, like showing up for a meeting with the divine. Because sleep really is a silent prayer, a nonverbal communion with something beyond form. When the soul sleeps surrendered, it doesn't just rest. It realigns, updates its internal map, resolves broken pieces, gathers energy, and heals ancient wounds that waking life can't touch. But this only happens if complete surrender occurs. You can't take flight with your hands full or rise when your mind is still stuck in control. That's why so many people today can't truly rest even when they're physically still. They haven't surrendered. They keep holding on to identity, defending their reasons, worrying about the future, and replaying the past. The body tries to power down, but energy stays tense, and that invisible tension keeps the soul from letting go. The result isn't just insomnia, but a slow breakdown of your energy field, a kind of malaise with no clear cause, showing up as chronic fatigue, morning fog, trouble making decisions, or feeling out of place even after a full night's sleep. Energetic surrender isn't weakness. It's spiritual maturity. It means recognizing that there's a deeper order beyond our control, and we can only connect with it by letting go of the need to figure everything out. Sleeping well is an art of detachment. It's not about emptying your mind or forcing thoughts to stop. It's about shifting your inner stance, from demanding to surrendering, from analyzing to appreciating, from controlling to embracing a fertile emptiness. In that emptiness, the soul finds true nourishment. When surrender happens, sleep changes. It's no longer escape, but initiation. You wake up clearer, energized, and more aligned. Not because you dreamed something specific, but because your whole being was reordered on invisible levels. The soul drank from a source beyond the physical world. It remembered, even if words fail, and that remembrance changes your waking life. Whoever has slept in surrender acts with more compassion, greater wisdom, and fuller presence. Sleep then becomes a hidden sacrament, a way of receiving grace without ever having lost it. Sleeping as an act of energetic surrender is one of the simplest and most powerful paths back to the self. It requires no blind faith, only inner willingness. It demands no strict discipline, only vibrational harmony. It asks for just a quiet yes each night before closing the eyes. I release what I can't resolve. Tonight, I let the night teach me without interference. Tonight, I trust. And with that yes, the soul sets off, not to escape, but to commune. Chapter 9. Bodies that don't fully wake. Morning fragmentation of the self. To awaken isn't just about opening your eyes or jumping back into daily tasks, regaining movement, or remembering what's pending. True awakening means putting back together the parts of the self that, during the night, expanded, loosened, or shifted to other planes. When the soul sleeps properly, it travels, but doesn't always fully return to the body. This incomplete reintegration shows up in a common, yet little understood experience. Waking up tired, anxious, feeling disconnected, confused, or strangely empty. The problem isn't the physical body, but a morning fragmentation of the self. The soul hasn't fully descended. The I is awake but incomplete. This energetic dissociation is real, even if it's hard to notice for those trained only in materialism. From that view, if the body is moving, everything should work. But inner experience tells a different story. Some wake up feeling weighed down by the day like it's a heavy burden, as if they never fully came back. The world feels distant or blurry, the body present but not fully inhabited. This isn't just heaviness, illness, or clinical depression. It's the feeling of being only partially incarnated, not yet recovered in full presence. During deep sleep, especially in non-REM phases, the body partially disconnects. Temperature drops, muscles relax, and brain waves shift dramatically. In that time, as we've seen earlier, the soul partially leaves its dense vessel to work on subtler planes. This detachment, called astral projection in many traditions, is not just a poetic idea, but an energetic process where consciousness partly withdraws from its physical base. What's often missed is that coming back is neither automatic nor guaranteed. It depends on many factors: the vibrational environment, emotional state at sleep onset, sleep quality, experiences on the journey, and even environmental or psychic disturbances that can scramble the return. If any of these factors are off, the soul might come back only partially, or parts may stay scattered across unintegrated planes. Shamans call this partial soul loss. Some esoteric traditions refer to it as subtle body desynchronization. Today, we might call it post-dream energetic dissociation. The body is awake, but consciousness is incomplete. This state can last minutes, hours, or even days if ignored, and in chronic cases leads to ongoing existential discomfort, mental fog, and disconnection. No conventional treatment can explain. Morning fragmentation can also come from failing to integrate dream experiences. When the soul goes through emotionally intense situations, whether symbolic or real, on other planes, and the waking self can't process them, a gap opens. The content can't be translated but leaves an energetic mark, a feeling of emotional overload, like something important but unclear was lived. Many people report blank dreams that still leave a strange residue all day, an echo of something the conscious mind couldn't digest, which then works behind the scenes, disrupting emotional and energetic balance. The solution isn't a quick fix on waking, but building a conscious reintegration ritual each morning. This isn't about aesthetics or empty symbolism, but an energetic need. Just as the body needs stretching, hydration, and movement after rest, The soul needs to settle back harmoniously into the body. If the return is unguided, it can be incomplete, like software failing to fully load. But by anchoring your awareness in the body right after waking, thanking the soul for coming back, mentally checking in with every part, and bringing presence to each area, the reassembly happens smoothly, and the day starts with integrity, fullness, and the soul fully inside. These practices aren't new. In ancient Egyptian initiation schools, sleep priests taught techniques to fully reclaim the soul at dawn, using words, focused breathing, touching specific body points, and chanting formulas to reincarnate every morning. Sleep was partial death. Awakening was resurrection, not just biological but energetic. Only when the soul fully returned could the day be lived with purpose. The same shows up in Kabbalah, where mornings start with a Modeh Ani prayer, a gratitude for the soul's return, honoring that this re-entry is sacred, not automatic. Neuroscience offers some insights here too. Morning reintegration may be linked to the gradual activation of the default mode network, DMN, which helps regulate our sense of self. If this network kicks in without conscious intention, it tends to replay automatic patterns, reactive thoughts, baseline anxiety, or ego-driven stories. But if we awaken intentionally, through mindful breathing, gratitude, and focusing on the body, the brain shifts into a coherent state of presence, which improves emotional balance, sustained attention, and overall cognitive function. Simply put, morning integration aligns the soul and rewires the brain. Those who wake up anxious for no clear reason, exhausted without prior exertion, or feeling out of their own skin are showing signs of this misalignment. The common mistake is to immediately look for an external cause. I must be sick. Something's wrong, or I didn't sleep well. The root isn't just physical, it's subtle. The soul hasn't fully landed. A body missing its full presence functions like an instrument without a player. Emotions swing, the mind scatters, decisions get fuzzy, and no outside fix can help. Only a conscious act of calling presence back, of re-entering the body from within, can heal this fragmentation. This morning ritual doesn't have to be complicated. A few minutes of silence, focusing on the heart, slow deep breaths, a body scan from feet to head, bringing awareness to each joint, muscle, and organ, and silently thanking the soul for coming back. If confusing emotions arise, let them be without judgment, knowing they may come from unprocessed nighttime experiences. Over time, this practice becomes second nature. The soul learns to come back fully, the body becomes its true home, and the day starts with clarity, free from leftover dream residue. To truly wake up is to fully inhabit the self, and not everyone manages that. So, not every day is lived from the same place. A soul welcome back each morning shows up with more strength, insight, and love. But if ignored, left wandering outside like a ghost without a body, it starts to fade, and the body, without its true inhabitant, just survives instead of truly living. Chapter 10. The Spiritual Technology of Sleep. Biochemistry of the Soul. Earlier chapters mapped sleep's spiritual, energetic, and symbolic roles as a process of detachment, learning, and soul reconfiguration. But every unseen dimension needs visible support, and human biology, when not clouded by bad habits, is the exact vehicle enabling these functions. There's no real opposition between spiritual and physical when you understand that the body isn't just a machine, but a compact energetic system designed to connect with non-ordinary realities. Sleep is a soul experience. but its platform is biochemically engineered with precision to allow that journey. This isn't some baseless esoteric claim. It's an insight emerging where neuroscience, endocrinology, and consciousness meet. At the core of this embodied spiritual tech sits a small, still mysterious organ, the pineal gland. Nestled deep in the brain's epithalamic center, the pineal has long been seen as the link between soul and body. Descartes called it the seat of the soul, and esoteric traditions from Hermeticism to Vedic India viewed it as a natural antenna for subtle perception. Physically, the pineal controls sleep-wake cycles by producing melatonin, the hormone that regulates our circadian rhythm and helps us drift into deep rest. But beyond that, recent studies show the pineal also produces tiny amounts of endogenous DMT, dimethyltryptamine, a psychedelic molecule linked to mystical experiences, lucid dreaming, and expanded consciousness. Endogenous DMT production in the human brain has been confirmed by animal studies, like those by Dr. Rick Strassman at the University of New Mexico. In his book DMT, The Spirit Molecule, Strassman documents how externally given DMT triggers remarkably coherent experiences, meetings with non-physical entities, interdimensional travel, sensations of death and rebirth, and access to complex symbolic info. While initially met with skepticism, later research supports that the human brain can produce these states naturally, especially during deep sleep, advanced meditation, and liminal moments like birth and death. In this system, melatonin isn't just a sleep hormone, but a vibrational key. Its release syncs the body with night, gradually lowering brainwave frequencies from beta, alert, to alpha, relaxed, then theta, light visual sleep, and finally delta, deep restorative sleep, preparing consciousness to detach from sensory input and access non-ordinary states. During certain REM phases, when the prefrontal cortex partially disconnects and the hippocampus activates, consciousness enters a timeless field. The body is immobilized, and brain activity mirrors patterns seen only in deep mystical trances or contemplative states. However, this body-spiritual tech requires specific conditions to fully activate. The pineal is very sensitive to artificial light, especially blue light from screens, and its melatonin production is severely disrupted by exposure to light after sunset. This helps explain why millions who get 8 hours of sleep still wake up exhausted. The subtle chemistry that supports the soul's night journey has been blocked by modern habits. The body lies still, but the spiritual technology remains offline. No real deep sleep happens without genuine darkness. No access to higher planes if the body's bathed in frequencies mimicking daytime when the soul needs to enter night. Circadian rhythm, controlled by the interaction between the retina, the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus, and the pineal gland, not only regulates sleep, but also body temperature, hormone release, blood pressure, and cellular repair. All these processes work together to make sure the body acts as a safe base for the soul's undisturbed journey. But when this rhythm is thrown off by shift work, poor diet, chronic stress, or too much light exposure, the result isn't just insomnia. It's an energetic mismatch. Consciousness can't find the right channel to leave the body or comes back poorly put together. The nighttime journey fails, and even though the body stays still, it neither heals nor renews. Emotional neuroregulation is another key part of this sacred system. During sleep, especially in REM phases, the brain restructures emotional memories, sorts through daily experiences, and shuts down stress circuits if conditions are right. But if the emotional system is overloaded with resentment, worry, or racing thoughts, the process gets interrupted. The mind stays active, cortisol levels remain high, and the body enters a paradoxical state. It's asleep but not resting, dreaming but not integrating. Sleeping with unresolved emotions is like trying to meditate in the middle of a storm. The vessel is ready, but the field is polluted. Luckily, this system can be reactivated. Science-backed practices help restore the body's natural ability for deep, conscious sleep by boosting melatonin, promoting heart coherence, and gradually waking up the pineal gland. Some of these include total darkness at night. Sleeping in complete darkness lets the pineal gland secrete melatonin without interruption. Digital detox before bedtime. Avoiding screens at least an hour before sleep removes melatonin blockers. Instead, choose paper reading, reflective journaling, or mindful breathing to signal the start of night. Heart coherence exercises. Breathing techniques like the 5-5 cadence. Inhale for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds. Sync heart rhythms with the autonomic nervous system, releasing feel-good hormones like oxytocin and serotonin, and activating the parasympathetic rest mode. Pre-sleep visualization. Focusing on a symbol, spiritual intention, or an image of light before sleeping sets the energy field, making the soul's departure smoother and reducing the chance of interference. Emotional silence. Ending the day with forgiveness, gratitude, and conscious surrender rebalances the limbic system, turns off psychic alarms, and prepares the body to fully benefit from sleep's healing power. When all these come together, the body reconnects with its original design as a bridge between worlds. The pineal acts as a beacon, melatonin as a key, the circadian rhythm as a compass, and the soul as the traveler. Every night becomes a hidden alchemy session where what was out of balance during the day can be healed, redirected, and deeply reintegrated. Conscious sleep isn't wasted time. It's the highest spiritual technology the human body can perform naturally. Modern science is just starting to uncover how it works. Ancient wisdom always knew its value. Chapter 11. The Guardian of the Threshold. The fear of letting go of control. Behind countless cases of chronic insomnia that don't respond to meds, sleep hygiene, or relaxation techniques, there's a common but rarely recognized pattern. A deep, silent, structural fear of letting go of control. This isn't just a mental habit or brain hyperactivity. It's an existential defense. Persistent insomnia without clear medical cause often hides a resistance to losing form, to letting the self be accessed, to allowing something else to take the wheel for a few hours. Deep sleep is an act of surrender, and for many, that surrender feels like a symbolic death, not of the body, but of the narrative self that clings to continuity, even through the night. That's why they can't sleep. Part of their psyche plays guardian at the threshold, blocking any dissolution from happening. This guardian isn't an enemy, a disorder, or trauma. It's an archetypal figure from the deepest unconscious, keeping alive the illusion that the self must always be active, alert, and in control. It whispers, if you fall asleep, something bad could happen. You have to stay vigilant. You can't disappear, or you'll lose control. This vigilance isn't born from willpower, but from fear. It's a defense mechanism as old as consciousness itself. At some point, maybe in childhood or during threatening experiences, the mind learned that letting go was dangerous, that giving up control meant vulnerability, exposure, maybe even death. That connection got wired into the nervous system like an alarm that goes off every night right when the body's ready to surrender. From the viewpoint of depth psychology, especially in the work of Carl Gustav Jung, this guardian represents the central ego complex, the psychic structure responsible for holding conscious identity together. When the ego faces the prospect of shutting down, as it does in deep sleep, it panics because it sees losing form as an existential threat. It doesn't realize that sleep isn't death but transformation, so it fights back, keeping the mind busy with looping thoughts, triggering memories, reviving conflicts, and projecting fears, not because it wants pain, but because it's been trained to fear the void. The silence before sleep is unwelcome, because in that silence, the ego senses its own smallness. And that's unbearable for someone raised to cling tightly to their story. Tantra, at its highest level, teaches that consciousness can only expand once it has learned to die every night. The act of surrendering during sleep isn't passivity. It's a method to dissolve the ego. In tantric tradition, it's said that someone who has overcome the fear of the void no longer needs to guard their form. Sleep becomes a daily practice of voluntary death. The self withdraws, the body offers itself, the soul journeys. But for this to happen, control has to stop. And control doesn't end through effort. It ends through understanding. Understanding that there's nothing to hold on to at night, that life goes on without the self micromanaging everything, that a deeper intelligence is at work, even when the mind is quiet. Without this understanding, the body might be tired but won't surrender, because the guardian is still there, sword raised, insisting that sleeping risks vanishing. This guardian figure shows up in many myths about descending into the underworld. In Sumerian mythology, the goddess Inanna must pass through 7 gates to enter the underworld, giving up a symbol of her power at each one: her crown, her scepter, her robe, until she crosses naked, symbolically dying. Only after that death can she be reborn stronger. In the Greek myth, Orpheus must go down to retrieve Eurydice but is forbidden to look back. His anxiety and need to control cause him to break the rule, and he loses her forever. These aren't just old stories. They're psychic maps. Sleeping as a spiritual act means the same kind of descent, not into a physical place, but into a state of non-control, where the soul faces what the ego fears: not knowing, not doing, not being. That's why many never cross that threshold. They're not ready to surrender their crown yet. The problem isn't sleep, it's the relationship with power. Those who need to control even the moment they surrender don't sleep, they fight. The body lies in bed, but the mind stays in battle. It clings to worries, ideas, plans, and desires, resisting letting go of its identity. And the result is shallow, broken sleep with no real flight, because the soul can't wake up when the ego's still in charge. It's like trying to launch a balloon tied to a post. No matter how good the wind is, it won't go anywhere. To calm this guardian at the threshold, relaxation techniques aren't enough. The self needs a deep retraining, learning to trust that consciousness doesn't turn off but transforms, that sleep isn't disappearance but shifting to another plane, that the soul knows where to go even without an invitation, and above all, that surrender isn't loss but victory. Deep sleep isn't a luxury. It's a spiritual practice of humility, a way of telling the universe, today I don't need to control. Today I let you carry me where I must go. Saying this from the heart can do more than any pill or trick. The body has built-in ways to let go, but they can't activate if the mind stays alert. Muscles won't relax if the limbic system still senses danger. The parasympathetic system won't kick in if the prefrontal cortex keeps replaying the past or planning the future. The body? Sure. The soul? When it's at war with the ego, it can't rest. That's why insomnia isn't sickness. It's getting stuck in the need to exist on its own terms, even during the only time of day it doesn't belong to itself. Some fear dreaming because they've been invaded before. Others fear remembering because their dreams were chaotic. But the deepest cause of insomnia is this: the fear of surrendering to mystery, of stopping being the author of their story, even for a few hours. That fear hides behind racing thoughts, muscle tension, and the need to control everything. But underneath all that is one unanswered question: who am I if I'm not myself for even a moment? Deep sleep is answering that question with an act, not words. It means letting another intelligence take the wheel, letting the soul fly free, letting the body surrender to its perfect design. Only those who accept this symbolic death each night are ready to truly wake each day. If they don't, the day becomes just another replay of the fear they never released. Chapter 12. Recovering the Original Dream. Sleeping to remember who I am. It's not just about sleeping well. It never was. Resting the body, balancing hormones, thinking clearly, or physical recovery are side effects of a deeper, forgotten reality. Sleep is a ceremony, a return, a reconfiguration. It's not just a biological habit or adaptive mechanism. It's a spiritual technology whose ultimate goal isn't restoring the body, but remembering the origin. And the origin isn't a place, memory, or story. It's a state of consciousness that comes before all form. To sleep deeply with the soul aligned is to gaze each night at the 0 point of existence, not disappearing, but relearning who you are without name, history, or role. Sleep, when truly understood, is remembering you have never stopped being the authentic dream. The dream that lets the soul detach without resistance, travel without interference, receive guidance, and renew itself. This is rare nowadays because, as mentioned, sleeping means letting go of identity, and the modern ego is built to persist, to assert itself, to stay even through the night. But those who manage to consciously deactivate it don't just fall asleep. They enter sleep like stepping into a temple, knowing that in that silent, formless space awaits a truth that can't be put into words. Only from that awareness does sleep become alchemy, not because it changes matter, but because it transforms the soul. And a transformed soul sees the world differently, waking up into a new reality. In the original dream, as practiced by ancient mystics, initiated sages, Himalayan yogis, desert hermits, and fire shamans, there was no break between sleeping and waking. Yes, the body rested, but consciousness stayed sharper than ever. From there, on planes science hasn't mapped yet, instructions were received, ancestral memories healed, course corrections made, and possible futures woven. The soul didn't rest. It worked in its natural element. And when it returned, that knowledge wasn't always remembered in words, but showed up as inner clarity, unexplained peace, and spontaneous shifts in behavior, perception, and how one responded to the world. Sleep, then, wasn't an escape. It was the center from which reality got rewritten. That original dream isn't lost. It's just buried beneath layers of overstimulation, emotional toxins, unnatural rhythms, and unconscious deals with noise. But it's still there, waiting to be recovered by those willing to unlearn. You don't access it through complicated techniques, but through a deep inner shift. You stop using sleep as collapse and start living it as a ritual, turning the night from a place of oblivion into a sealed lab of reintegration. Conscious sleep reconnects us with what the day scattered, and in doing so, reconfigures not just mind or body, but the inner story we carry. Sleeping well means rewriting the self-story from the core of being. Indigenous peoples understood this. In many indigenous languages, there isn't even a word for sleep that means disconnecting. What we call sleeping, they described as returning to grandfather, speaking with the origin, or entering the womb of the Great Spirit, because they knew that night isn't a pause but a continuation on another plane. They also knew the soul, if trained, can move clearly in those planes, carry messages, heal wounds language can't touch, and above all, remember who it is beyond time. For them, sleeping was remembering that essential memory, not a personal past, but the memory beneath experiences and identities, the memory whispering that one is more than a child, more than a body, more than a story, more than a name. In that deep dream, without images, symbols, form, or story, there's only presence. And it's that presence that rearranges the psyche, the energetic body, the emotional blueprint. That's why when you wake from such a dream, something changes even if you can't explain it. You stop searching because you've remembered, even if just for a few seconds you've known. And that's enough to reorder an entire life. Consciousness sciences are beginning to confirm these states. Research in neurotology, transpersonal psychology, and contemplative neuroscience is documenting deep sleep phases where brain activity doesn't disappear, but reorganizes into patterns similar to advanced meditation. In these states, limbic system activity drops, the parasympathetic system activates, heart rate coherence stays high, and the body engages in cell regeneration more intense than normal sleep. None of this happens by accident, but by disposition. Whoever sleeps with presence wakes with power, not ego power, but the strength of a consciousness reassembled at its center. From that center, life changes, because you no longer respond out of fear, duty, or conditioned reflex. You respond from the memory of the origin. It's not about knowing who I was, but remembering who I am, without labels, biography, or story. Deep sleep is the chamber where everything unnecessary is erased. And when you come back, you don't have more ideas. You have direction, because you act not from the wound, but from the source. Sleeping well, then, isn't the goal. It's the way the soul accesses its inner lab, its hidden temple, its reconnection station. In that space without form, time, or thought, something bigger than you acts, heals, teaches, and reorders. And when you return, if you've truly slept, the world isn't the same anymore because the observer has changed, and everything you call reality just reflects that observer. Recovering the original dream means reclaiming the thread that connects all things, living again from the center instead of the edge, letting the night stop being a pause and become the source, not to escape, but to remember. Because only those who remember who they are in the dream know how to wake up to real life. Amen.